All right, let's dive right into this explainer, where we're unpacking a fascinating 400-year-old historical illusion. We're looking at a source document that asks a wild question. Did a secret society actually engineer our modern world from the shadows? According to the text we're examining today, the very origins of modern science and democratic ideals were carefully, meticulously crafted by a covert brotherhood. And the crazy part? At the center of this whole web isn't some mythical figure but Sir Francis Bacon, literally one of the most famous guys in English history. The document lays out this really comprehensive argument that Bacon was actually the supreme Grand Master and the secret founder of the Rosicrucian Brotherhood. It's a huge claim for sure, and we're going to walk through exactly how the source builds this case.
Now, right off the bat, this brings us to a huge, kind of mind-bending paradox. Why in the world would England's most powerful legal mind, a man who eventually became Lord Chancellor, be absolutely terrified to put his own name on his own ideas? I mean, if you have this grand, brilliant vision to improve humanity, why hide it? Well, to understand this mystery, we really have to look closely at the harsh realities of the time and the intense dual life that Bacon was essentially forced to lead just to survive.
To make sense of this, we're basically looking at a massive double life. On one hand, you have the highly visible public statesman. We're talking powerful, connected, operating at the absolute highest levels of the English government. But on the other hand, you have this completely covert existence. It is secret life. The text presents Bacon as the founding father of the Rosicrucians and the invisible architect behind a massive pan-European network of philosophers. According to the document, these two lives ran parallel, but out of sheer absolute necessity, that secret side had to remain entirely hidden from the rest of the world.
Section 1. The backdrop. A dangerous European climate.
So to really get why he was hiding, you have to understand that proposing radical changes in the early 1600s wasn't just controversial, it was literally mortal peril. You had the overwhelming dominance of the Catholic Church, with the Pope fiercely attacked in these reformist manifestos as a Roman impostor. Plus, there was rampant infiltration by Spanish spies all over Europe. Over in England, pushing for an aggressively Protestant scientific union ran directly counter to the sovereign's clandestine policies of Catholic appeasement. Oh, and hovering over all of this was the looming violent threat of the Inquisition. Basically, if you were a prominent politician and you openly challenged the rigid orthodoxies of the church and state back then, you were signing your own death warrant, no question.
And you know, this fear of persecution wasn't just some theoretical paranoia. Take the real-life case of Adam Hauselmeyer, who is actually noted on the title page of the 1614 printing of a Rosicrucian manifesto. What did he do? He merely replied in support of a circulating manuscript of these ideas. That's it. And his reward? He was seized by Jesuits and condemned to work in irons on a galley, just for being associated with the movement. So yeah, the authorities were actively hunting down anyone connected to these radical ideas. The stakes were incredibly high.
Section 2. The goal. A Universal Reformation.
So what exactly was this grand vision that was worth risking the absolute wrath of the church and state? According to the text, Bacon's goal was nothing short of a massive shift toward a scientific and democratic utopia. He called it a universal reformation of the whole wide world. He allegedly believed that the ancient Greek and Roman philosophies everyone relied on were just speculative, totally barren of practical works, and were actually holding humanity back. Instead, he wanted to pivot all of civilization toward modern scientific advancement, technological progress, egalitarianism, and a society built on universal brotherly love. It was this huge vision, where the efforts of scientists and inventors would actually serve the common people, laying the groundwork for a total societal transformation.
Section 3. The Architect's Dilemma. The Necessity of Anonymity.
Now, as Attorney General, and later Lord Chancellor, open association with anti-Catholic, reformist manifestos was completely politically impossible for Bacon. And Bacon himself actually knew this better than anyone, noting in his own words that it is true there be some affairs that require extreme secrecy. He recognized that to pull off this vision without being completely destroyed by his own government or foreign inquisitions, he had to be an absolute master of disguise. He had to be everywhere, yet completely invisible at the same time.
Anonymity wasn't just a preference, it was literally the only solution to avoid treason charges while trying to plant the seeds of this universal reformation. The source explicitly mentions that the Rosicrucian manifestos carried serious, treasonable implications. For Bacon, stepping into the light and claiming his work meant the immediate, total destruction of both himself and his entire life's mission. So, his great architect's dilemma was figuring out how to build a global movement without anyone knowing he was the guy actually drawing up the blueprints.
Section 4. The Solution. Manifestos and Masks.
Okay, so how do you actually start a global revolution invisibly?
Well, to build this underground network of intellectuals, the text claims Bacon deployed what we can call secret engines. First, he used living people as literal literary masks, names you might recognize like William Shakespeare and Edmund Spenser, to publish works pushing his philosophies without drawing any heat onto himself. Second, he founded the Rosicrucian Brotherhood to gather up learned men who would labor quietly behind the scenes. Third, he embedded extensive ciphers, anagrams, and secret watermarks into printed works so that only true initiates would know who the real author was. And finally, he purposefully published his radical manifestos far, far away from his homeland as a deliberate misdirection.
And the timing and location of all this was absolutely crucial. Notice how these manifestos didn't drop in London. The source argues this was a brilliant blind. By printing the Pharma and Confessio in Kassel, Germany, and the Chemical Wedding in Strasbourg, Bacon totally threw off the state spies and insulated his English identity. He successfully created this incredibly enduring 400-year-old illusion that the Rosicrucians originated in Germany. It completely protected the English Attorney General from the explosive fallout of his own revolutionary writings.
And commentators analyzing this, like Hargreave Jennings, point out something really interesting. They note that the anonymous Rosicrucian manifestos perfectly mirrored Bacon's own personal, documented views. They argue that the entire fraternity was meticulously designed as his personal vehicle for change, matching flawlessly with the scientific methods and utopian dreams you find in the writings he actually put his name on.
Section 5. Secret Engines of Change.
So what is the ultimate legacy of all this cloak and dagger maneuvering? Well, just think about the stark contrast between the rigid, highly oppressive 17th century realities he fought against versus the world the text claims he ultimately engineered. The source document insists that Bacon's covert network actually succeeded in paving the way for modern secularism, utilitarianism, and democracy. It claims that his concept of Solomon's house, which he wrote about in his utopian work New Atlantis, was the literal blueprint for the Royal Society. And even wilder, that his secret brotherhood played a pivotal role in the early colonization and democratic framing of the United States of America.
So it leaves us with this totally wild, provocative thought to chew on. If these texts are accurate, the very bedrock of our scientific and democratic institutions didn't just naturally evolve on their own over time. They were deliberately designed by an architect hiding in the shadows, using ciphers, masks, and underground networks just to survive a deadly political climate. It really makes you wonder who actually wrote the script for our modern age.